think Bon Olswick's history is really part of the heritage of Rolls-Royce. Bon Olswick is the birth of the jet engine here with Frank Whittle in the 1940s. And that tradition of innovation, engineering excellence has been maintained, if like, for generations and decades since then.
Without the development in Bon Olswick of the Whittle jet engine, where would Rolls-Royce have been? They wouldn't have been in existence. And then we come to 1971, RB211, Rolls Bon Olswick 211.
The RB211, first with the 3-shaft system. The RB211-535, first to use the wide chord fan blade. And the Trent, first to be certified at £90,000, the most powerful commercial engine in the world.
The first building that they built at Bankfield was built in 1905 as a weaving shed, and then they extended it in 1909 to what it is now today. And when that shop floor opened for weaving, there was over 3,000 looms on that shop floor. It was the biggest one with so many looms on one level in the country. Of course, when Rolls-Royce came, that was the shop floor where they did all the work. I have a photograph of the RB211 coming out of Gilbrow on the back of a wagon. Men were stood at the gates at Gilbrow as the engine were coming out. There's also a photograph of the RB211 coming over the Gilbrow. There's a driver there hanging out at window and the engines on the back of the wagon. I have photographs of the engines in test beds where they had it on. They were like two big pillars and it was mounted between them. They tested it like that outside. When they were running the engines, which they basically ran to destruction to find out what was wrong with the engines in them days, modify it and improve it and test it again until they got everything spot on. So in Bon Olswick, you could hear those engines running when they were running them. You could hear them all over Bon Olswick.
The test beds, when I was a little boy, the house used to shake with the vibration from the test beds.
The photographs that I have of machines, people working on machines, assembly, where the engines used to stand on end, and they used to go down into a hole in the ground, and they could move them up and down, depending on where they were working on them.
Oh, I love working at Rolls-Royce. The technology is fantastic, and the work that was done on the Bon Olswick site was unique. There's nowhere else in the world that was developing the products at the time that we were doing. The site itself has seen a lot of development of new technologies, new capabilities in the machine shops, and that's meant a huge increase in the type and complexity of machines and processes that they operate. Early days in Bon Olswick, there was the AMD, the Advanced Manufacturing Department, and that under Bill Swale set up the foundation of the fan blades. First the honeycomb blade, but then I got involved with the work with the DB SPF blade and did all the process development there, from diffusion bonding, superplastic forming, and all the other processing chemicals and machining. And that AMD department, in effect, became the blueprint for what was become Mantech, or manufacturing technology, within Derby and the rest of it. So again, Bon Olswick set the footprint, or the way forward for how to develop and manage innovation and technologies within the structure of what was their AMD and what became Mantech. The technology employed at Bon Olswick has changed a lot over the years. When you think about the early honeycomb hollow fan blades that we plated the interlayer onto the surfaces, because that was the technology at the time. Chemical processes were in, and it was easy to plate. That developed into production of a foil that we could lay down. So that altered the processes, the controls we had. Then the Trent series of fan blades came along, which meant a whole new technology. For the Trent fan blade, my favourite part of the process, it's difficult because there's two. There's the diffusion bonding, which I have to say that no one else in the world produces diffusion bond quality that we've developed and achieved. I think diffusion bonding comes close second to superplastic forming, because the ability to generate an internal core pattern through a hot process and control the shape of the finished product at the end of that is really special. It demands a lot of expertise from the operators and the equipment and the control of the whole process is very special. And what that does is to give you the strength of a solid piece, but with 80% weight taken out of it. It really is a clever construction and design. The UK aerospace industry is important to the country, both locally and throughout the UK, and especially so here in the Northwest, where it's quite a Northwest alliance or hub of aerospace companies which are working together, one to support each other, but also to generate further orders, further manufacturing.
We've had a tremendous relationship with Rolls-Royce. More recently, we've had great problems with flooding in Barnoldswick, and Rolls-Royce, the staff, the managers, were there on the ground supporting their local community in fighting the flooding and working together to get solutions and sort out problems. We've always enjoyed such a good relationship with the company, and I'm sad to see that may be going.
Over the years I've worked at Barnoldswick, you often came across someone who said, oh yeah, my dad was on that, or yeah, my granddad even was there. And I think that really encompasses, if you like, the local community pride. It's where Barnoldswick sits in the local community. It's very much part of it. And it's part of the life of the town and the generations to come. It supported families, it's giving them their lifestyle, and hopefully for generations to come as well.
I think it is quite common for family members to work at Barnoldswick. For me, my dad has worked at Rolls-Royce. He's just retired this July after 40 years of working there. And I think with him working there, that also made me want to make him proud as well. I always feel like I've tried to put my all in for myself, but also for him as well. So I started my career at Rolls-Royce 7 years ago in August, and I started as a practical apprentice, which meant I had 10 months off-site training at Training 2000, where you train in various practical roles, milling, turning. You learn about CAD and programming, welding. After my 10 months, I then started on site at Rolls-Royce, and within the 3 years of your apprenticeship, you do segments based on different sections, which took me anywhere from beam welding to NDT, such as X-ray, and into inspection, which is now where I work.
So I followed a family tradition, really, joining Rolls-Royce. My grandfather worked at Rolls-Royce. He started in the 60s, my dad in the 80s, and then I joined in 2011. We've all been polishers for Rolls-Royce, so over the last 50, 60 years we've been there. So I've had many conversations with my grandfather, the things that have changed in polishing since he was there in the 60s and 70s. You know, they worked on tiny rotatives, now we're working on the big Trent XWBs. His stories and my stories, they don't always tie up, but the polishing, the element's still there. And so in the time that I've been at Rolls-Royce in polishing there, we've seen quite a lot of investment, a lot of the older machinery going out, the old Linischen Metallboards have gone, been replaced with the robotic mag cell machines. We had guys going out to Finland to learn these machines properly. They've passed that on to the guys on the shop, and we've really got stuck in and involved with this new way of working. The robotics are completely different to the old machines, but the guys, to their credit, have really got stuck in and embraced these changes. When I first started at Rolls-Royce, we had 2 of the robotic Linishers. Now we've 10, so we've had that investment. You know, we've seen the old machines go, the team have seen the new ones come in, and the future's looking bright. And now the potential outsourcing of our work, what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to that machinery, all that investment.
So when I started at Rolls-Royce, I know my dad was really proud, and for me it was nice to see him within the workplace, and as sad as it sounds, we'll go home and talk about work, and I know how much Rolls has meant to my dad. It's given him a fantastic career for 40 years, which is brilliant, and he's taken a lot from that, but he's also put so much into Rolls-Royce, and he is one of many, in my opinion, at Barnoldswick, who he would come home at night, and as a maintenance engineer, he would sit there, and I could see him thinking about work he had done within the day, and he would sit there at night to the point where he'd got it, and he'd been thinking about a job that he hadn't been able to fix, and he comes home and he thinks about it, and then he goes in the next day and he completes that, and for me that's just, I've been really proud to see my dad there and do so well, and it would be so nice for other generations such as myself and generations after me.
When I go on holiday as a family or travelling across the country to visit family, whenever I get on a Rolls-Royce plane, it does give you a sense of pride when you see that badge, that logo on that engine. You can't help it, especially when you work for a company that means a lot to you. You know, I mean, it's been in my family for quite a number of years as working at Rolls-Royce in Barnoldswick. I have a lot of pride working where I do.
Yeah, it's a sense of pride there, because you know that, one, the quality and the integrity of the engines is the finest, and that a lot of those fan blades will certainly have my name on them somewhere, as I helped in the manufacture and some of the decisions about them.
Maybe my fan blades are on there, or my father's, or my grandfather's even, if you're going back from the older engines. It's a real pride there.
Pendle is a borough of small enterprises, small to medium enterprises, SMEs. We have probably 3,000 SMEs in Pendle, and a lot of them are here because Rolls-Royce is here. The expertise that has built up over the generations means that the skills have been put to other uses, as well as the supply chain. We risk losing that impetus, we risk losing that enterprise from the whole of Pendle and beyond. That's a worrying prospect, and one that need to be very alive to.
I think the wider economics of aerospace manufacturing are widely known. Rolls-Royce is responsible for about 2 to 2.5% of GDP exports on its own. The industry employs around 575,000 people directly within the UK, with many, many more in the supply chain. And it's recently been estimated that for every primary job within the big employers, there is between 4 and 6 that are supported within the supply chain itself.
I think UK aerospace is going through a massive crisis at the moment. Our MPs, our ministers, the UK government just seem to be letting this happen. Other countries' governments are stepping in now to help this industry out.
Well, the government have invested so much in terms of research and development. At the moment at Barnoldswick, I know that we're doing a lot of MPI work, such as Ultrafan and Crick also. The government have invested so much money into projects such as this, and for Rolls-Royce to then move that out of the UK, surely the government would be asking the question of why are we losing jobs when we can keep them within the UK?
The crown jewels of Rolls-Royce, wide chord, fan blade manufacture, those key industrial skills are critical for the future of our country. The strategic assets that we shouldn't be farming off to foreign shores. They're something that are crucial if we're going to be an economic power of any sort. We need those skills, we need those capabilities and that capacity to do this advanced engineering.
But actually, where do our engineers, our scientists, where do they go and be challenged? And Rolls is one of the high technology calibre companies that we have in this country, and we need to keep it. We need to keep that prestige across the world for Rolls-Royce. We need to demonstrate as a country that we're still, forefront of innovation, engineering innovation and technology, as we have been throughout the century.
I think at Rolls-Royce, it's a British company. I know they're all over the world now, but it's a British-based company. It was all developed and everything in Britain, and to see them taking everything away, it seems that Britain does all the developing and all the hard work getting these works going. Well, it just seems such a shame that they built all this factory up and got Rolls-Royce on the feet with the jet engine, and now they're just up in sticks and kind of leaving us. So why isn't our government subsidising Rolls-Royce to that extent to get them to stop here and keep the factories running?
As a business, the site was vulnerable because we had one diffusion bonding facility, we had one plant that could make certain elements of the process. The Singapore facility was set up as a dual source. It's all about business continuity. It's a dual source facility. That needs to be remained for what it was. It's about business continuity and its capability to manufacture.
Singapore is a completely different facility. If Singapore have problems, then literally you have got nowhere to go with producing fan blades. And as fan blades are such an important component to Rolls-Royce as a make component, then I do believe that they really do need two facilities.
I don't think the company should underestimate the engineering prowess that has been displayed over many years from Barnoldswick, and how instrumental it has been in providing solutions that we find in the current generation of engines. But more importantly for the company, To lose that engineering skill would greatly impact on its ability in the future to provide the engineering challenges that will undoubtedly arise with the next generation of engines.
The Barnoldswick site has a good, strong history of new product introduction of all the Trent fan blades. And there's a skill there, a unique skill really, in that it's not just putting a new product into a press or a process, pushing a button and seeing that it works. It never works first time. There's a learner curve that's been developed, and that knowledge is ingrained within the engineers in Barnoldswick, but also within the management and structure support, because it takes time to develop a new product, and it's against the run of, if you like, a manufacturing plant which knocks out so many fan blades a day, so many fan blades a shift. And the new product introduction is against that in terms of the time it takes and the patience required, and that's not always realised by some of the management team. We do here at Barnoldswick, and I think we do it very well.
From a personal point of view, having to speak to the workforce who are facing the prospect of being compulsory and made redundant, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. You can see it in people's eyes, the fear for the future, what the outlook holds for them and for their families and for their wider community.
My own family have had generations of people working at Barnoldswick. My aunt worked there during the Second World War as a secretary and actually took down test bed reports. My brother, back in the 1960s, became an apprentice at Rolls, worked at Rolls throughout his life, sadly passed away. And in a sense, I can't say this, but in a sense I'm glad that Keith passed away before this happened, because he would have been devastated that Rolls-Royce could do this to Barnoldswick, to a community that he loved the company, everybody else loves the company, and then they do this to us. And I think that is just so appalling.
I think it would have a huge impact.
Losing Rolls-Royce Barnoldswick would be devastating, not only to the local community, the extended community, to the generations of engineers that have served the facility, but also to the future generations that we haven't seen yet. And I think leave Rolls-Royce in a very, very weak position as regard fan blade and bearing housing manufacture for the future.
I understand the crisis that Rolls-Royce and many other companies within the aviation sector are in at the moment, but from my point of view, it's something that is going to pass and we will recover from this. And I like to see the positive side of things. I don't want to, the recovery is going to take time, but to think just for now and not for the years ahead. We really need to think carefully, especially with sites such as Barnoldswick. We really don't want to make decisions and outsource work. Once the jobs have moved out, once the jobs have gone, it's so difficult to then try and bring that back.
My heart says, yeah, I'd love for Gilbride to stay open, but my business head acknowledges that for the amount of blades that we've got to do and the size and the cost of the facility, that actually it probably would be better to consolidate into one site at Barnoldswick. So we can accept that aspect if it goes. The difficulty is the transferring of work. We understand that there is a pandemic on, and that has reduced flying and then reduced the need for original equipment engines in the short term. However, this is the company making a strategic choice to ship what work there is from Barnoldswick overseas to Singapore, which I believe is a big risk to the company.
I think Rolls-Royce should retain wide chord fan blade production in Barnoldswick. I think there ought to be investment in new developments, and I think that as a country we should be saying to Rolls-Royce, no, you cannot sell off the crown jewels to Singapore. They have to remain as an integral part of the future of our nation and the future, as far as I'm concerned, of our town.
the heartache of people that are working there with what's going on. I think some of the promises that you've had over the years, people try the hardest as people coming in on weekends at the last minute to make sure certain jobs, are delivered, and people have been stopping back for hours, and they're happy to do that to help the company. I feel in some ways it's like a feeling of betrayal that a lot of people have worked really hard. It's a big part of your life. I come home after work, I can't help but talk about work, and not in a negative way at all. I enjoy my job. I know that a lot of my colleagues enjoy the jobs, and it means a lot to them. I just feel like it'd be such a shame to lose these kind of people that are so devoted to the job.
I would say people in Pendle have a lot of potential. Rolls-Royce needs to capitalise on that. We need to use the generations of expertise to develop not only products for Rolls-Royce, but the opportunities for the future for us all.
I've got 3 daughters myself, and I would love to see them awarded the opportunity to work at Rolls-Royce and get the education that's there for them, the HNCs, HNDs, the skill qualifications, to carry on the tradition that my family's got of working at Rolls-Royce in Barnoldswick. Most of my close group of friends all work at Rolls-Royce. They did apprenticeships, and now we're all based all over the site, some in different roles, some in quality roles, some working on the structures part of the business. My message to the Rolls-Royce seniors would be to reconsider these proposals to take away the fan blade from Barnoldswick. The both sites have proven time and again what Rolls-Royce in Barnoldswick can do.
People are so determined to keep the site open and to keep jobs here for their future generations and for their sons and daughters to also potentially have the opportunity to do what they are doing now.
The products we've introduced through the Trent fan blade, no one else could have done those, and that's a credit to the whole team. I do fear for the manufacturing of fan blades because there's that knowledge of years and years of the processes, what can go wrong, what can go right, little quirks of the processes. And the engineering team in Barnoldswick know that. It's just that inherent knowledge you have that you've built up over the years that you can't replace once that knowledge is gone and you've lost those people from the site, and their skills will be lost, and it will be lost forever.